So,
Good.
Jesse, Laura in Chicago wants to know, my spouse has a huge pension with the city of Chicago. She's been with him for 29 years. However, only married for the last 6. What is she looking at in terms of portion of that pension? 29 years together, married 6.
Well, I got good news and bad news.
Give her the good news. What's Laura going to get?
Good news is Laura's going to get divorced. That's the good news for her. Bad news is, unfortunately, she's only going to be entitled to the spousal share of his pension, which if he's had that job and he's accumulated most of his pension before the time they were married, and they were only married for 6 years, then it's only that 6-year period that she would be entitled to her spousal share. Now, what could that be? Generally, it could be 50%, and if we're only talking about a 6-year marriage, much like we were talking about the 4-year marriage, that the court certainly could give a disproportional share of that, give her more than 50%, and it would also depend on other factors as well. The courts also look at non-marital property, marital and non-marital. Generally, anything acquired during the course of the marriage is marital, generally.
Now, wait a minute. She cohabitated with him for 29 years.
It doesn't matter.
They split the marital expenses. They even have a house together that they paid for all 29 years. In her eyes, this is a long-term marriage, and she wants 50% of everything while they were together. She's in for what, a rude awakening?
She's in for a rude awakening. It's not going to happen. Well, according to the law, it shouldn't happen because,
Oh, he doesn't want to give it.
She hasn't been married.
He's throwing that 6 years out at her, according to her email.
Yeah. He
That
probably talked to a lawyer.
Yes, he said, we've only been married for 6 years. You're not entitled to anything but 6 years, and maybe not even 50% of it.
Yeah, it depends in terms of, that's an interesting issue with the house. If they bought it early on in the time they got together, because that certainly couldn't be in anticipation of marriage. There's a lot of interesting factors there, but she's not going to get what she thinks in terms of the share of his pension if they hadn't and weren't married.
So the real significant date is the date of the marriage, not the date that they were living, cohabitating together in a monogamous relationship.
That's correct in terms of those property dispositions. Yeah, it's not going to be, now depending upon what judge you get, you might hit a heartstring and you might get a disproportionate share, but really if you're just looking at kind of what the law says, hey, that's from the date that you were married.
Okay, well, let's say she gets the 6 years and she's happy with that and she's going to get 50% of it under their agreement. Talk about the mechanics of how that actually gets into her hands, because this is a pension. This isn't something that she can just go and withdraw, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Each plan administrator has, or each plan has different rules, and so generally, the court orders what they call a quadro, Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or quildro, Qualified Illinois Domestic Relations Order. And what happens is, depending upon what the distribution is, that'll be laid out in the marriage settlement agreement or in the judgment. If they go to a trial and the court actually makes the award themselves and makes that adjudication, and then either of the parties' attorneys will have to draft a quildro or a quadro and send it in. Generally what happens, and the good way to do it, is to get the information from the plan administrator first as a guide, complete it, and then send it in for preliminary approval. After you receive the preliminary approval, then you can go ahead and have that entered and then send in the certified copy of that to the plan administrator. And then, there are various options. There could possibly be a lump sum. There could possibly be payments. It just depends on the plan. And what will happen is generally they'll break off the amount of whatever that person's going to get and put it into a separate account. And, that person could even roll it over into their own pension plan if they wanted to do that.
I've seen many cases where a litigant was awarded a percentage of the spouse's pension, profit sharing, or retirement plan, and then simply did nothing. Even though there was a court order awarding a portion to them, they didn't take action.
That's
and
dangerous.
They lost the interest.
Right. They could lose that. They're also in danger because if something happens to the other spouse, they're no longer married, and so they're going to have an issue. That's something that should be addressed probably
Right.
sooner than later.
Yeah. One case in particular, and I won't give any names, but the person who was awarded the pension or profit sharing did nothing, and the ex withdrew all of the proceeds and took off, parts unknown. So when the spouse finally woke up to the fact that she should receive some of that benefit, contacted an attorney to get it done, the ex was gone, the account was gone, it was liquidated, and she was left with nothing. So you have to move quickly, or judiciously, I should say,
Right.
once you have an award on something.
Right.
So it was a big problem.
A lot of times, what will happen is once the plan administrator or the plan, is advised of what's going on, then they'll freeze it.
They never advised anybody.
Right.
They got the award,
Didn't do
it was
anything.
part of the judgment, and they let it sit in a drawer.